Good morning. It's good to be with you all this morning. I know many of you from my time here in ministerial school and the 3 years that I worked in the Unity Village bookstore. So I was here every Sunday morning. I just wasn't here. I was across the way. It was just 6 years ago that I walked across this stage and was ordained a Unity minister and have been here serving for the past 6 years. It's been a wonderful, wonderful experience, a wonderful trip, and this spiritual community has been a part of that journey from day one. I was a very grateful recipient of the Men of Unity Scholarship, and I just want to say thank you again publicly to the Men of Unity and to Unity Village Chapel for the support that you give our ministerial students as they walk the path to ministry. I remember as I came to the end of my journey in ministerial school and was preparing for my final set of licensing and ordination exams. Those are our oral exams. I see the ministers in the room nodding their heads. And Reverend Claudel County said something to me that made an impression. She said, think of your very last L&O, your last talk, your credo as, what is your good news? What is your gospel that you're going to take forward into the world and share? And that really resonated with me, and it made me start thinking not only about my personal gospel, but about unity. What is our good news? What is our gospel? Mark 16:15, the writer attributes this statement to Jesus. And he said to them, "Go into the world and proclaim the good news to the whole creation." So what is our good news? Unity, as a movement steeped in prayer and spiritual education, in the legacy of the Fillmores. What is our good news? I'd like to start this morning with a story that I think encapsulates the heart of Unity's good news. The story's called Acornology. If you've heard it before, bear with me. I first came across this wonderful story in a tiny little book called A Wisdom Way of Knowing by Cynthia Bourgeault. And it goes like this. Once upon a time, in a land not so far away, there was a kingdom of acorns beneath a grand and mighty oak tree. And because the citizens of this kingdom were modern and fully westernized acorns, they indulged in a lot of self-help courses. There were courses called, Who Would You Be Without Your Nutty Story? Getting All You Can Out of Your Shell. There were woundedness and recovery groups for those acorns that had been bruised in their fall from the great tree. There were spas, just like Awaken, for oiling and polishing those shells, and various acornopathic therapies to enhance longevity and well-being. One day, in the midst of this kingdom, there appeared a naughty little stranger, apparently dropped from the blue sky by a passing bird. This little stranger was naughty, he was capless, he was dirty, and he made an immediate negative impression on his fellow acorns. And to make matters worse, standing in the middle of his fellow acorns, he stammered out this wild tale. He said, "We are that." The other acorns just looked at him a little cross-eyed. Well, that's just crazy. But as they were polite acorns, they continued to engage him in conversation. And they said, "So tell us, how do we become that tree?" And he said, Well, it has something to do with cracking our shell and going into the ground. That's morbid, they said. Well, if we did that, we wouldn't be acorns anymore. An acorn is a seed. Its nature and its destiny is to become. We too are seeds. The amazing Jean Houston says that we are seedlings, godlings, seedlings of the divine. And for me, that is the heart of Unity's good news. We are that. Now, as you can imagine, a concept or a story like that brought about a lot of juicy discussion in seminary classes. What do you mean? Are you saying you are God? Well, said differently, I am in God as a wave is in the ocean. I express God as the wave expresses the ocean. I am by no means the totality, but I am the essence, the expression of God. Matthew Fox, theologian, calls it original blessing rather than original sin. That it is our destiny, thank you, our destiny to become, that we are worthy. Emily Cady says in Lessons in Truth, in a way that resonates for me, we are each some portion of God made manifest in the world. I lived much of my life unaware of this good news. I grew up in Stone Mountain, Georgia. I spent more time at church up until age 16 than I did at home. I was part of a vibrant Baptist church, sang in a 60-voice youth choir, but the image that I had of myself fit the theology of the church of my childhood. Broken, sinful, worthless, shameful. And I took on that theology at a very early age. I was a painfully shy child. Wallflower doesn't begin to describe it, you know. I have a friend, Reverend Kelly Isola, who says, I just wanted to fade into the woodwork. And that's very true of most of my time in elementary and high school. I just didn't want to be noticed because I was not worthy. In the midst of all of this, in this church, there were things that I value. My commitment to service, my love of community. I can look back now and take the good with me. And that experience at Glen Haven Baptist Church informs who I am today and how I minister in the world. And yet, broken, sinful, worthless, sent me down an interesting path. At age 16, I stood up in front of a church of 500 people and said, God's called me to be a minister. You know, it's one of those moments where you sit back down and you go, what did I just do? Where did that come from? So at age 18, when I finished high school, I went off to Liberty Baptist College at the time, now Liberty University, with Dr. Jerry Falwell. And I immersed myself in the seminary experience. I joined the King's Players, became an actor in a Baptist school. If you want to be an outcast. But over the course of 2 years, and with several other catalysts in my life, I entered the dark night of the soul. I didn't know that's what I would call it then, but it felt like my world was coming to an end. And after a few months of turmoil, I left college, I left seminary, I left church, and I said, if you can't love me, God, as you created me, then you've got the wrong guy. As a matter of fact, there is no God. And that's how I lived my life for the next 22 years. There was nothing remotely religious about my life. I went out of my way to avoid it. I put together a roller coaster of a career, moving to Washington, D.C. and up into New York, working for a gourmet kitchen retailer. I opened their stores. It was a wonderful time. Yet every time I achieved something worthwhile, I destroyed it. You see, because of my sense of unworthiness, I added multiple addictions over the course of 2 decades. And I came to a point in time in the late 90s, 98, 99, where I found myself in Manhattan, unemployed for several years, and homeless. I had run out of friends with sofas. I'd used up every bit of goodwill available to me, and I found myself one Saturday morning about 4 o'clock in the morning in a park, on a bench, taking stock of my life. And I heard a voice as clear as a bell, just a real awakening. Something has to change or you're going to die. And the very next thought was, there has to be something more than this. So I did what any self-respecting 40-year-old would do. I picked up the phone and called my mother, who sent a bus ticket. And just a couple of weeks later, I found myself in Panama City, Florida, staying with my little brother, his wife, and my little 3-year-old niece at the time, and began the process of seeking that something more. I began to dry myself out, to walk the path of recovery. It wasn't easy those first couple of years. But somewhere along the lines, I began to look for something spiritual, that higher power. I didn't want anything to do with religion. Forget it. But I was open to something spiritual. And then one Saturday, reading the newspaper at work, I came across this full-page article on Unity of Panama City. They'd built a new building. They had 13 acres that was about half wetlands. And the Audubon Society had given them an award for the way that they honored the land. And I remember thinking, this might be a church that I could be a part of. If they see spirituality in nature. For me, the doorway back into spirituality was a book called A Celestine Prophecy. You know, it's been termed New Age by many, but the spiritual truth in that book of spirituality in nature resonated with my heart, with my soul. And so I went to Unity of Panama City. I remember that first Sunday like it was yesterday. I sat on the back row in my shorts and sandals. This was Florida after all. And I cried through the whole service. I heard, wherever you are, God is. And I heard, I behold the Christ in you. And I had to resist looking around to see who they were talking to, because that was not the self-image that I held. I heard you can change your life by changing your thinking. I was introduced to meditation, the use of meditation in recovery. One Sunday, all of those things. And each one of those things were gems that opened my heart, that cracked me open, just like the acorn, and allowed me to go into the ground of my being and begin that process of becoming. I felt I've talked about what I heard that Sunday, but what I felt that was palpable in the air, much like this community here, was love and acceptance and a sense of possibility. And I think that's a key point for us in Unity, is that oftentimes when folks are new to us, they're not necessarily attracted to our teachings. They're attracted to the environment we've created by practically applying those teachings. Then as they crack open, just like I did, and take it deeper, those teachings change lives. They certainly did for mine. And I'll be honest, the lack of dogma was attractive to me. If I'd walked into a very traditional expression of unity that said, here's what we believe, this is it, I probably would have turned around and walked out. But what Reverend Joanne said that first Sunday morning was, we're not here to tell you what to believe. Here's what we believe. Take what works for you, what you can apply in your own life, and leave the rest. I'm like, wow, this is unlike any church or religion I've ever been a part of. What I found in unity, that love and acceptance, that lack of dogma, if you will. Charles Fillmore once famously said, I reserve the right to change my mind based on new information, based on new study, based on my thought process. I reserve the right to change my mind. And there's a wonderful letter from Myrtle when they were courting. Apparently, Charles had questioned something she had said, and she said, I am decidedly eclectic in my theology. Is it not my right to be so? Myrtle definitely had backbone. That love, that acceptance, that warm community, that sense of possibility in unity, of becoming, cracking open, going into the ground of our being, and growing into something new and wonderful. Just as the sunlight pulls the oak seedling higher into the light, we're that. We are that. The divine in expression, loving, growing, and becoming. Now, I will say, each time I have experienced spiritual growth in my life, spiritual expansion, if you will, it's been when I was willing to crack open and go into the ground of my being and do the work to move forward in becoming. My ministry, my personal spiritual mission is to facilitate that cracking open for other people. One of my first teachers said that it is the role of the minister, and you've probably heard this, to comfort the afflicted and to afflict the comfortable. It's that cracking open process. Sometimes it's not always pleasant. So in closing, I'm going to invite you, can you remember your first time in a Unity community? Was there a particular truth teaching that was an aha moment for you, that really resonated, that opened you up to a greater understanding of who you were, your divine nature? Bring to mind the minister or teacher that shared that with you, the light bringer who shared that opened your heart and led you into a new state of being. Remember how you felt when you first heard that, when you first applied it, when you got that changing your thinking could change how you felt, how you lived, how you showed up in the world. I remember a young lady that I went to church with in Panama City. She was in the choir, and she was always smiling. And she said, I just love unity. Everybody at work wants to know what's going on with me because I'm smiling and I'm happy all the time. Imagine what would happen if everyone in this room took the energy, the love, the sense of possibility that you felt that first Sunday and felt it at a cellular level. Think of the impact that we could have on this community, on this city, and on our world. Can you sense that vibration? We are that, the gospel of unity. And he said to them, go into all the world and proclaim the good news to the whole creation. Namaste.